All right, so good morning, everyone. How are you? You had a good week? Thank you for your beautiful singing. It was really, did you hear it? Did you listen to yourselves? It was really great. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for the band and the singers. Okay, 11 years ago, I had a kind of premonition about my son who was about to be born. And I remember going through the park in Bunny Park, where we live in Hanwell, walking with my wife and sharing about, because we just had the baby before, and this was Sunshine, so Akshay, if you know, and he was born into my arms. So I'd already experienced delivering one baby. And so when I was thinking about the next one coming along, I was already a little bit anxious, like, okay, this time we have to be ready, right? Because I had to deliver him in our corridor just outside our bathroom. So I was like, this time, we have to be ready. So I was walking through, and I told my wife, I've had this kind of premonition. We have to be ready for this next baby. Like, we can't take any chances. And I'd had some thoughts about what might happen. So I shared that with my wife. So, of course, the time came for the labor. And I'm telling the doctors, look, I know, I know you have your ideas, but I know my wife. I know what happens. I'm timing the contractions myself. And I'm saying, look, you have to be ready. You have to be on standby. And they were like, no, it's okay. She can go home. So we go home. And of course, this time I have everything ready at home. I mean, of course, I don't have a hospital ward. I just have my living room. But I have, towels ready, got the water, everything. So this time it's like, just if it happens, this time I'm going to be ready. And again, it was like touch and go. So I thought, no, I ain't going to take a risk. I'm going to take it back to the hospital. So back to the hospital we go. And then again, the doctors, the nurses say, no, it's not happening right now. Maybe just go and take her upstairs in the waiting room. So I thought, okay, at least she's in the waiting room. And then this was around 10 o'clock. And I thought, maybe she's going to be hungry. So I thought, I'll just go and get some food. So I popped down to the local Chinese takeaway. And I just think, and I'm deciding, all these things are going through my head, like what she want to eat. So anyway, just quickly buy something, and I come back to the waiting room. And as soon as I come back to the waiting room, I went to my wife. She's just sitting there, like, in the waiting room. She's obviously fully dressed and everything. And then it's like, as soon as I come back, then I look at her, and then she says, baby's coming. Okay. So again, I take off my jacket, I roll my sleeves up, and I'm telling the nurses, look, and they're saying, it's okay, we can just take her downstairs, just sit in the chair. And I say, no, you can't put her in a chair. I can't put her in a chair and then take her down. I can't do that. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to have to do this myself again. So then I got my wife ready, and I said, okay, we're going to just do this here, because I know the babies, I know how it is. I've experienced it, on a few occasions, how these babies come. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. So I just got down on my knees, and I just got ready, and I got this baby. And the nurses were just standing watching. They literally were just not doing anything. And just because it was like, it's like maybe, they don't want to be involved just in case something happens, right? So I got this baby out. And then again, I know what to do, because I was like, okay, I need to make sure the airwaves are clear. So I was doing all of that, checking. And then because I'd had this premonition, and I remember discussing this with my wife, I thought, oh yeah, I have to check the cord. So because I'd had the premonition, I went straight, because the baby comes out, it's like this, it's all covered in everything, so you can't always see everything so clearly. But I realized I just had the thought quickly. So I just scooped the cord, I put my finger under his neck, just scooped the cord out. As soon as I did that, he came out, like, wah, wah, like, okay, he's good. And then I've got him. But then it's like, okay, then there's just, you can imagine, it's just a puddle of everything. And there we are. And then, of course, the nurses come along, and then they bring this little trolley, this plastic trolley. And you got these harsh white lights in the waiting room. And then they put the baby there, and then I'm looking at my wife and thinking, okay, what's going on? Because she needs to now also settle down. So I'm caught between this baby in the cot and my wife, who's still in a situation where, essentially, for the mothers who know, the placenta hadn't come out. So the placenta was still there. So I'm dealing with a situation with the doctors where they're like, this isn't, quite cleared yet, and we might need to go into like an emergency operation. And at the same time, I got this tiny little baby, just literally just in the middle of a corridor with these strong lights. And I'm thinking, where do I go? What do I do? And then, of course, as the doctors were getting almost to this point of saying, we're going to have to do this operation, at that point, my wife was able to finally deliver the afterbirth, and it seemed to be okay. So at that point, I knew my wife basically needed me. So then I thought, okay, we need to just make sure she's okay. The baby seems to be fine. It's not ideal. So I remember taking my wife away, and then, I took her to this little shower room, and then I bathed her. I got her kind of settled down, because obviously it was quite traumatic, right? So then I just bathed her, settled her down, and then brought her to the room, and then, just got her down, settled down. And then we brought the baby in, little baby, and put him in there next to her. So then it seemed like everything was fine. So this was it was late into the night. So finally I thought, okay, now I can go home. It seems to be all good. And I got home that night, or early morning, whatever it was. And as I got home, I came into the house and I got a message. And the message was, Hyojunim had passed away. So it was, like there was life and death, basically. Suddenly my baby's been born, and then suddenly Hyojunim had passed away. And I was trying to like kind of add it all up. I was completely knackered. And at the same time, I'd just been through all of this. So anyway, somehow I just settled down. And then, after a few hours, I thought, okay, I better go back to the hospital. And as I was driving to the hospital, then this thought came to me, this new baby, I'll call him Hyojin. And we'd already been thinking about names for this baby. So, we'd think about some Sanskrit names, some Korean names. Earlier on, we'd asked Aryan, our eldest son, like, do you have a name for this boy? Like, do you have any ideas? And he, of course, at that age, he said, Heaven. Let's call him Heaven. And I thought, oh, okay. When he goes to school, Heaven. You have some kids, from, like people from Sierra Leone, their names are like Monday. I thought, Monday, Wednesday, Sunday. I thought that kind of works, but no, Heaven. But anyway, we found this other Korean name, which means like heaven or sky, Hanul. So anyway, as I was driving to the hospital, then suddenly it all fell into place. So his name was and is Hyojin Hanul Rohan Rai. Rohan Sanskrit, it means to rise up. Hanul is heaven, Hyojin is Hyojin. So his name is literally Hyojunim goes to heaven. So that's his origin story. So that was exactly 11 years ago to this day. March the 17th, when, that happened. So I was sharing that earlier on in this week, I was like thinking about Bruce Lee, right? I sent an email, so when I was young, I thought about, like I had these posters on my wall, and it was like, people like Bruce Lee. I really looked up to Bruce Lee. I wanted to be like Bruce Lee, and I had all I'd watched all the films, and I thought Bruce Lee's fantastic, and of course, Bruce Lee had already died, it was, late 70s, early 80s. And I was thinking, it'd be amazing, because there was this one film called No Retreat, No Surrender, where Bruce Lee comes back as a spirit, and he teaches this young guy how to, basically stand up for himself and, not take anything from bullies and all of that. I thought, that would be so good if Bruce Lee just came to me, and I'd be praying, Bruce Lee, just come to me, I'm ready. I'm ready to be trained. I want to be your disciple. I want to be your object, right? I'm ready for you. So, of course, Bruce Lee never came. But me and my brothers, we used to make nunchucks. We used to get the kung fu pumps. I did karate. And so, but yeah, basically a little bit obsessed with Bruce Lee. And then later on, this film came along called The Karate Kid. Do you remember The Karate Kid? Yeah. So Daniel-san, wax on, wax off. And then the great thing about Karate Kid was there was Mr. Miyagi, right? Because he found a Mr. Miyagi. And I still think I have to make T-shirts that say, everybody needs a Mr. Miyagi. In other words, everybody needs a kind of subject. Everybody needs this kind of elder person in their life who can guide them, because we're all looking for that in some way. We look for, who's our subject. So yeah, that inspired me. Like, yeah, if only I could find a Mr. Miyagi. Where's my, looking around my neighborhood in West London, where's this, oriental elderly gentleman, who's going to guide me and teach me, show me the way. And I was, again, so all of these thoughts were in my mind. Like, I wanted a Bruce Lee. I wanted a Mr. Miyagi in my life. So later on, at the age of whatever it was, 18, nearly 19, when I met our church, then all those things came to me in one. When in the church, I found my Bruce Lee, and in the church, I found my Mr. Miyagi. That's basically why I could connect so easily, because in that moment, it's like, yeah, here's my elder brother, here's my father, and this is going to be, how I can go forward in life, how I can be in a position to inherit and to move on, and to become, a better me, I guess, to become someone, like these people that I looked up to. So, Hyojinim was 46 when he passed away. So, that's actually the age I'm going to be this year. So when I think about, 46, that's not old. Yeah, it's not that old. To be 46, and to pass away, it's too young. And Hyojinim had various turning points in his life. One of them was when he lost his own younger brother, Hungjinim, in a car accident. That was devastating for him, because he was, his direct younger brother. He was only 17, 18. And it was a car accident. And that was a turning point for him in his life. And, he continued to reach out to Hungjinim through his music. There's a lyric in one of his songs where he's talking about Hungjinim in spirit world, and he's saying, I'll run and you fly, because I'm here on the earth, I'm going to be running. And you're there up in heaven, you fly. Together we're still, heaven and earth, we're still going to be together. And later on, 2005, December the 28th, so December the 28th, 2005, Hyojinim lost his oldest son. He was also 17. Hyojinim had met him a week before, because he was going to become 18. And because of his personal situation, he didn't have a chance to be with his eldest son. But his son had already chosen some colleges in New York, and because he was going to be legal age, he wanted to be with his father. So he was sharing with his father, look, Dad, I'm going to be 18. I can be with you. And he showed his dad his driving license. And his driving license was a Shingil Moon. So he was proud, to be his father's son. And then, just a week after that, December 28th, he also passed away in a car accident, just like his brother, 17 years old. So this was a time when Hyojinim had kind of been through a really tough time. So he was just keeping him, he was doing his conditions. Hyojinim was always doing these, every time he made an album, it was a condition, I need to make this in 40 days, I need to make 40 songs. And at that time he was making, he made these conditions. And it was really, I know the people who were around him at that time, it was not easy, it was not easy. So 3 days later, January the 1st, 2006, Hyojinim started to speak again, 3 days after his son died. And he came onto the podium in Barrytown, and he said basically all the things that he wanted to share with Shingilnim, his son, because he wasn't able to do that. Every time he comes there on a Sunday, he's going to talk to his son in spirit world. So that's what he started to do. He started to speak again. But he was speaking to his dead son, trying to share with him all the things that he never got a chance to share. So that was 2006, and Hyojinim started to speak again. So for myself, that was really important because, as I mentioned, at the age of 18, 19, the first thing that I connected with was not divine principle. It was true children, and particularly with Hyojinim's speeches. So I'd been listening to his speeches, and that was my way of connecting with Father. I fell in love, with my elder brother. And because I could connect with his heart, it was so easy for me to fall in love with Father. So when I came to study divine principle, when I came to understand and read Father's speeches, it was so easy to just, receive that and connect with that and feel this sense of filial piety, this sense of just being a father's son. So, and later on, obviously at the same time as I was listening to his speeches, I started to listen to his music. Actually, the music was the first thing, even before the speeches, the first thing I even connected with was his music. Before I knew anything about the movement, the church, or anything, the first thing I connected with was the music. So, yeah. So, of course, Hyojinim's words were very close to me. I know that at that time, it wasn't always, I wanted to share this. I wanted to kind of share it with brothers and sisters, and it wasn't always possible to kind of set up a situation where people were able to, I guess, receive that, It was sometimes contentious for some people because Hyojinim was very direct, But if someone's like your family or your brother or someone like that, then, you know that when they're kind of emphasizing something or that, they're kind of being direct, it's because they love you. They really want you to, kind of get the, sometimes you just need that from an older brother, right? You need a little kick up the butt, right? It's not always about, being somehow, beating around the bush. Most of the time, I think, Hyojinim was very direct. And for some people, that was not easy. But, so that was, those were like two occasions in which you could maybe try and understand, something about Hyojinim's life, losing his brother and losing his son. And my spiritual father was very close to Hyojinim. He lived with him. He took care of his kids. He was, with him every day in his garden. And he tells me that, Hyojinim's life was like a life of tears. Every day he'd cry. He'd be making his songs, and then he'd be, sharing his heart, and he'd always be crying. So some of those speeches were recorded in this book, which is, from the 2006 onwards. So, a couple of guys got together and they put this textbook version of the speeches together. There's also the videos, and if you want to go all the way back to the 80s, there's also speeches there. And I think, it's great that now there's more, I think, possibility to connect with Hyojinim. There's some little documentaries, there's some there's a lot of things about Hyojong, right? Hyojong culture, and the things that are going on with the music, they've even done a musical, with Hyojinim's music, and that's all great. But sometimes I feel like that's not the Hyojinim I know. That's like a kind of sanitized version of Hyojinim. So I decided last year I was going to make a documentary, which I'm working on, and it's a way that I'm hoping to connect people to Hyojinim as who he was, and not this kind of canonized, kind of saintly version of him, which I feel people are not going to be able to connect to. He wasn't that kind of guy. He was a, If he was around now, I think anyway, things would be different. But he's not, and I feel, we can still try and connect with him in spirit. And if you are open to that, and hopefully maybe later on when I finish this other documentary, you'll find a way in. Because I feel like, some people need to, it's divine principle, DP 101. To understand the artist, you look at the creation, right? And so for me, it's like, look at his music. And then I've even gone to another kind of premise with this, is to look at the artwork on the albums. Because he really put a lot of thought into the album covers. And so if you look at that, there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of these ideas of heaven and hell, and about repentance and all kinds of things. His battle, his everyday battle with Satan, all of that is actually in those album covers. So I was able to go back and find the original graphic artist who did the album covers. And I spent 2 days with him, and we filmed this whole series of interviews about him talking about the artwork. And I don't know if you've probably noticed, like on BBC4, there's a lot of really great music documentaries that go back into looking at musicians, and even some that look at actors, and just looks at their lives and what happened to them, and those who even got into addiction and what went through their lives, and still how were they able to continue to create. And you understand much more about them because of that, in terms of what they were creating, what was really going on behind it. So anyway, with that in mind, do you remember I showed you some clips last year? Was it last year? From a concert with Hyochnim's children. So we saw something with Shin Yeonim, who's Hyochnim's eldest daughter, and we saw something with Shin Chulnim, who is Hyochnim's eldest son. So today I'm going to show you a couple of videos from Shin Hung. So yeah, Hyochnim named his second son after his younger brother, Hung Chinim, so his name is Shin Hung. And so I'm going to play you a couple of songs from that concert. And today, because it's obviously the anniversary of his ascension, we've put this video up live. So it's now on quite a few platforms. So I'll share the link with you later today, so you can see the whole concert video, and there's also another little documentary video. Way back in the day, like 93, I used to listen to all of Hyochnim songs. I had obviously no idea the lyrics. Now it's so great we've got the translation up there. But I had a little Sony Walkman, and my spiritual father gave me this. I thought it was the coolest thing. It was like a little cassette box player, right? Yeah, and every day I'd come in. I was working in Soho. I was working in some film company. I would drive in the morning, come here at 5 a.m. to do pledge with Mark Brand, who was the national leader at that time, because Mark Brand had just become national leader. I don't know if the elder members remember when he became national. And he wanted to do a condition here to, start his national leadership. So he was inviting people. So I thought, yeah, I'll be there. So it's to drive from Northolt, West London, come here at 5 with Hyochnim on, and then finish the morning service here, drive to Elephant and Castle with Hyochnim on, and then park in Elephant and Castle, walk all the way back to Soho, Wardour Street, from Elephant and Castle with Hyochnim on, work until lunchtime, go to this little Christian church just off Leicester Square. I don't know if you know the Prince Charles Cinema. Next to Prince Charles Cinema is a church. I used to go there and then study, basically read God's Will in the World, God's Will in the Ocean, all those books. Read those, finish work, whenever finish work, walk back through the night, through the London streets, with Hyochnim on. And that was very powerful with Hyochnim, going on, kind of guiding me through. So all these songs, all these albums are literally ingrained in my heart. And even though I didn't understand a word of Korean, literally not a word, I got so much from these songs. And they've stayed with me ever since. So often I go driving into the night. I still go. You can ask my family. At night, I disappear. At night, I disappear into the night. Because that's where I go off. That's my time. I go off sometimes for hours. I don't come back maybe till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And that's my time. I go off into the night, and I'll have Hyochnim with me, just to guide me, get me back on track. And I feel like that's kind of the relationship I have with him as my elder brother. He's always there for me. And the point simply being that if I find myself going off track, or even if I find myself in hell, Hyojnim brings me back out of hell. And that's the kind of elder brother, also I try to be. I go out and I meet, other younger brothers or, kind of second gen who are maybe, at a certain point in their life. And I feel like, wherever you are, I'll take you wherever you want to go. If you really want to go and do this thing, if you really want to whatever, like you feel like you're just curious and you want to just, whatever. But if you end up in some place, just hold my hand, I'll bring you back. Because that's what Hyojin does for me. He's always there for me in that way. So I can always go back to him. I mean, it's all inside of me, but at the same time, when I hear his voice, when I hear his music, yeah, he's there. He's my brother. He's putting me back in, it's like checking myself. When so that's really my prayer. It's like, it's really the root of my life of faith, really. So with that in mind, I think the last thing I want to share with you, and I'm not going to come back and say, because I want to leave this now with Hyojnim. The first song that I ever heard, and this is the first thing I even knew about anything to do with our movement, our church, was this song called Rebirth. It's the first thing I ever heard. So I'm going to leave you with this song, and this is like, I guess, like I said, I'm not going to come back after this song. I'm just going to let you listen to this song. But yeah, this is where, Hyojin really wanted to make his offering to his parents. He really wanted to, come before his father, to also be recognized for, father was many times pushing him like he does with a lot of his kids, like, you can do better, you can do better. And the only reason I'm pushing you is because I know you can do better. Don't be content, like, we can, because he's also preparing them for the world that we actually live in, not in some kind of, fantasy land. So through this song, Hyojin will speak for himself. But yeah, for me, this is, and I think for a lot of people who are close to Hyojin, this is like our anthem. Yeah, most of Hyojin's songs are epic songs, and this is an incredible song. So I'm going to go away for a month tomorrow. So I want you to look after yourselves. Like Pastor Hashi said, like, be shepherds, not sheep. So I'll leave you with Hyojin. Thank you so much.